The radical left's agendas are attacking your values, but conservatives like you haven't forgotten what this country was built on. My friends, the Heritage Foundation exists to make sure your voice is heard and to represent your values in the D.C. swamp. The Heritage Foundation stands for your values, and they won't give up the struggle because they know you never will. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
My name is Larry O'Connor, and I'm sitting in for the great one, Mark Levin, this afternoon, this evening, whenever you're listening. I do the morning show in Washington, D.C. I'm so used to saying it's morning. It's always morning, wherever I am. Thanks for tuning in here. Mark is in Israel on a pre-scheduled planned trip. I've known that I've been guest hosting tonight for a couple of weeks now, but I'll tell you, when the events of last week happened with a friend, Charlie Kirk, and it's going to be interesting to watch everybody. You know, Charlie Kirk had several very good, close friends, and I would never consider myself one of them. But I can tell you that we all knew him. And the way Charlie Kirk was, he treated you like at any given moment you were his only friend. Because he was engaging, he would look you dead in the eyes, he would act like you're the only person in the room worth talking to. He was polite, he was considerate, he was supportive, he was enthusiastic. And unlike other people in this business that we're in, because he was in this business, he was in our business, he was a talk radio host and a podcaster and so much more. Unlike most of the people in this business, he didn't have much of a competitive streak or an ego. He truly believed in the Reagan ideal that the rising tide lifts all boats. Charlie Kirk approached his day in politics and in the media and in activism that if he could help you and make your life better and your career better and what you're setting out to do better, then it would help all of us and it would help him in the long run as well. But his focus was on you. He was that kind of guy. And I would never call myself a close friend, but we were definitely friendly. I've known him. I was searching my emails. When did I first start corresponding with Charlie Kirk? It was 2017. When he pitched a op-ed to the Washington Times when I was writing op-eds at the Washington Times. And my buddy Charlie Hurt, who runs the op-ed page there, I was just a columnist. I passed it over to Charlie Hurt, and we had it published, and he was very grateful, and he was a great guy. That was the first email correspondence I had when he was still located in Illinois. And when I found out the events of last week, and I was covering it myself on my radio show in Washington, D.C., and also on my daily streaming show for Town Hall Media, I knew that tonight, at this time, 6 p.m. Eastern, I'd be talking to all of you on this amazing platform, The Mark Levin Show. And I've been excited about it because what we've witnessed over the last several days is nothing short of a transformation in the conservative movement in America. It's been a hell of a few years for this movement, hasn't it? But I think that going forward, we're always going to look back at September 10th, shockingly adjacent to September 11th, another life-altering moment in American history. We will look back at September 10th, and we will mark things in our American political conversation as pre and post the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I think we are always going to describe where we were in this country before we all witnessed in real time our friend and leader Charlie Kirk slaughtered before our very eyes, and after. After, when we were not allowed to experience our grief, when we were not allowed to mourn, when we were not allowed to go through the phases of grief that psychologists have looked at for decades now, right? Anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. We were never allowed anger. We were lectured to. We had fingers wagged in our face about both sides. We weren't allowed to be angry. We weren't even allowed to be depressed. We weren't allowed to grieve. We weren't allowed to mourn. We couldn't have vigils this weekend without the very types of people that brought us to this point where Charlie Kirk, a 31-year-old father of two toddlers, was murdered in cold blood while engaging in a conversation with college students. As we attempted to have candlelight vigils and prayer vigils, the very people who created the climate in this country that would lead this evil person to rob those little children of their father, they had to trample all over the flowers and the balloon monuments that were put up for Charlie. They had to sing their anti-fascist, fascist songs to try to drown out our patriotic songs and hymns that we sang. And all of the sanctimonious intellectual preening superiors that write for the New York Times and the Washington Post or broadcast on our lamentably pathetic broadcast networks. They couldn't even let one day go by before they implied, if not outright stated, that Charlie Kirk was asking for it. The bloody murder of Charlie Kirk has affected all of us. But I would argue that we've been affected even more by the aftermath, by the intervening days, where the very best you could muster from the liberal elite media icons that rule our day every day, the very best we could muster from them was, well, yes, it's just gotten too heated on both sides. Really, both sides? Funny, because we have a president who has a hole in his ear because a bullet came millimeters from his skull during the campaign, and now we have a corpse. That doesn't seem like a both sides situation to me. And every time they try to equivocate and try to show you examples of how it is both sides, they're forced to lie. They'll talk about Gabby Gifford still, that they still blame on Sarah Palin and Glenn Beck. By the way, you want to talk about Gabby Giffords? I'd love to talk about Gabby Giffords because that was a lie too. It took Sarah Palin 10 years to have her day in court in her defamation suit against the New York Times and a corrupt New York judge tipped the scales of justice. And the damage was already done. They said Sarah Palin and Glenn Beck was responsible for Gabby Giffords being shot in Arizona. And it turns out that the murderer was just a lunatic psychotic who had no political affiliation whatsoever. It had nothing to do with her being a Democrat. Meanwhile, Steve Scalise still walks with a limp because he and his fellow Republican congressmen were guilty of the crime of practicing baseball in Alexandria, Virginia, when a left-wing lunatic Bernie Sanders, Rachel Maddow-inspired would-be assassin tried to shoot them like they were turkeys in a field. A bona fide political hit that they just won't talk about. These people do not deserve your respect, and they don't deserve your time. They don't deserve the time and respect that Charlie Kirk would give them, actually, ironically, so that he could hear them out and then defeat them with facts and logic. But see, the problem is they don't listen or care about facts and logic. They are ideologues that have an agenda, and nothing will stand in the way of steamrolling that agenda right over your body if necessary, by any means necessary. You hear that a lot these days from them. Yes, we are very, very different. I know I am. And I wonder if you are too. We're going to have a conversation all evening long here, or afternoon if you're on the West Coast. And I do want to hear from you about how you are now different because of what happened last week, how it has changed you, how it has given you resolve, how it has given you a purpose, a task, a mission. And that could be anything. It could be a return to faith, a return to prayer and scripture. It could be a return to your responsibilities with your family. It could be the resolve to wake up every day and make the most out of your life. Because when you look at what Charlie Kirk was able to accomplish by the age of 31, he did 3, 4, 5 times as much as most people do in an entire lifetime. And if the memory of Charlie Kirk can inspire you to do any of those things, and certainly to inspire you to get up off the sofa, stop talking back at the radio or your computer screen or at your favorite cable news station, and instead get up and get involved and start knocking on doors and start getting those votes. Because we are the majority in this country. We are not the fringe. We are not the minority. We are not the voice that should be kept in the ghetto of right-wing media. No, we are the dominant majority voice in this country, and we've been forced to apologize for that. And to seeing what happened to Charlie Kirk and the lies that's been told about him since then, and the mean-spirited, vitriolic, out in the open display of hate that you've seen, not from some anonymous gamer in their mother's basement, blasting somebody on a social media platform and then waiting to see what kind of clicks they got. No, the vile hatred that you've seen, not from anonymous people, but from people with their names and their faces assigned on their social media platforms. These are judges, these are lawyers, these are teachers, these are school board members, these are airline pilots, these are doctors. And they celebrated this young man's assassination with the full confidence that nothing would ever happen to them because, hey, after all, everybody agrees with them. We're supposed to kill Nazis, aren't we? If that has moved you just a little bit further to pick up that phone and get involved with your favorite organization, with your favorite political party, if it helps you have conversations in your neighborhood or on your social media page, unapologetically saying, yes, actually, I support this president and his party and his agenda, and I'm not alone. Forget it, being alone. There's more of us than there are of you. In fact, why don't you support this president? Why don't you support this party? Why don't you support the common sense things they're doing in enforcing our immigration laws and enforcing our laws, trying to bring Western civilization back to our major American cities? Why don't you support securing our border? Why don't you support reducing taxes so that we can keep our own money? Why don't you support encouraging manufacturing here at home so that we're not importing everything that we vitally need? What is wrong with you for your political positions? You have to stop apologizing for being the majority voice in this country. And if the events of the last week have moved you just a little bit further to get involved and get those votes out, if each and every one of you have now moved so that between now and the next election day, if you're in Virginia, it's coming up in a couple of months, or in New Jersey, a couple of months. Everywhere else, you've got a good year or so to build that momentum and get people registered and get people active. We are the majority in this nation, and we haven't been acting like it. Charlie Kirk acted like it. And he moved mountains. So now what are you going to do? How is your after Charlie Kirk world going to look? What are you going to do with it? 877-381-3811. I want to hear from you. And I want you to tell everyone listening, and me, the entire Mark Levin nation, I want you to tell them what you're going to do and how you're going to help us move to victory in the true spirit of Charlie Kirk. We're going to take phone calls. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how the movement has been altered forever by these events. And in a moment, you need to listen to this in a moment, as you see hand-wringing on cable news and the Sunday shows, where all the intellectual, snotty-nosed liberal elites are saying, how did we get here? How did we get to this place in this country? I'll tell you how. In a moment, I'll share with you exactly how. That's next. I'm Larry O'Connor, gratefully and proudly in for Mark Levin.
Mark Levin.
Decades of conflict in the Middle East made many despair of ever finding a lasting peace. But in 2020, Israel and 4 Arab nations, once estranged, joined together for peace by signing the Abraham Accords. Thanks to President Trump's leadership, these historic agreements opened up previously unimaginable channels for cooperation, new pathways for peace, trade, investment, and collaboration. After 5 years, the Abraham Accords still stand as a beacon of hope for a future of shared growth and interfaith tolerance. Why should Americans like you care? Peace in the Middle East is vital to America's national security, and that's why the Heritage Foundation dedicated its resources to supporting the implementation and expansion of the Abraham Accords and Peace Through Strength. And that's why the Heritage Foundation's experts released the Abraham Accords report, tracking the evolution and expansion of the Abraham Accords. This exclusive resource, only available from the Heritage Foundation, presents the latest news and statistics on how the Accords are boosting trade and innovation and advancing the U.S. critical interests in the Middle East. Get the latest updates today by going to heritage.org/LEVIN. That's heritage.org/Levin. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Larry O'Connor sitting in for Mark Levin. Thanks for tuning in here tonight. We got a lot to talk about, and I'm already way ahead of myself. There's so much I want to talk about and get into about how we got here. I'm going to blast away all the both sidesism that you keep hearing. Oh, don't get me wrong. Yes, of course, there's violent political rhetoric on both sides, and yes, there are violent individuals on both sides. That can be true, but it's not symmetrical. It's not even. It's not even close to being even. The violence is overwhelmingly coming from the left and targeting the right. And as Charlie Kirk's body has yet to be buried and his funeral has yet to take place, I would request politely and not too respectfully that our moral superiors on the left just hold off on the both sidesing until we at least have the chance to have our funeral. And then maybe you can try to make your pathetic lying point. But I want to have your voices in here as much as possible, too. Caller line 3, Karen in Tampa, Florida, listening on the XM satellite platform. Karen, thanks for joining. I'm Larry O'Connor in for Mark Levin.
Well, hi. Good evening, Larry. I hope you're having a good evening. The post-Charlie world for me, after I dried all my tears. I've never cried so much this week since 9/11, so it's ironic it's that same week. But it has really emboldened me. It has made me be more bold in my religion, especially about my religion. Being able to be courageous and talk about it more. That's what he's done for me.
Me too, Karen. Believe it or not, I want to share my story, and I'm not alone. But believe it or not, even though I'm a talk show host and I have a podcast and a platform and I write books, I have been reticent.
After Hamas's October 7, 2023 terror attack on Israel, the Abraham Accords seemed doomed to fall apart. But now, 2 years after the terrorist attack and 5 years after the historic peace agreements were signed, the Abraham Accords remain resilient. However, without the support of the American people, the Accords have an uncertain future. So to keep the Abraham Accords alive for the next 5 years, it's critical that patriots like you support them. And that starts with understanding exactly how they came about and why they're so important. At heritage.org/Levin, heritage heritage.org/LEVIN. You'll find an exclusive resource only available from the Heritage Foundation. The Abraham Accords report gives you the latest news and statistics on how the Accords are boosting trade and innovation and advancing the United States' vital interests in the Middle East. The Accords will only continue to bring peace to the Middle East with your support, so go to heritage.org/Levin to claim your free resource today. That's heritage.org/LEVIN, paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
The Mark Levin Show, the pool feed for the conservative media. Dive in now. 877-381-3811.
Larry O'Connor sitting in for the great one, Mark Levin. I've got a podcast. I've got a video streaming show. I've got books. I've got a radio show. I got too much to plug. You like me? You want to follow me? Really easy. LarryVIP.com. LarryVIP.com, that website has everything. It has my radio show, has my streaming show, has my columns, has my newsletter, LarryVIP.com. We live in a pre-Charlie Kirk assassination and post-Charlie Kirk assassination America. That's the reality of the situation. Things will not be the same. Over the course of the last dozen or so years, I've had two friends die prematurely before they should have died. Charlie Kirk, of course, at the age of 31. Andrew Breitbart, at the age of 43. Those of us who knew, and I knew Andrew much closer. We were dear friends and colleagues and worked together. I cannot say that I was that close to Charlie at all by any stretch of the imagination. We were colleagues. We were both on the Salem podcast network together. We did a panel together at CPAC, ironically honoring the life and death of Andrew Breitbart. Charlie was inspired at the age of 18 when Andrew died. I was inspired by Andrew's life work. It was one of the goals of his life was to get published at the Breitbart websites. He never met Andrew, though. But he participated in the memorial panel that I moderated just a couple of years ago, and we exchanged text messages and direct messages. Most of the people in the industry did. We all knew Charlie like that. He and Andrew Breitbart had many things in common, actually, but the one thing that it really resonates with me today is that they both died prematurely, and while we were mourning their deaths, while we were comforting their widows and their families, while we were trying to figure out how we would move on without these people in our lives who meant so much to us, we then witnessed people who went out of their way to celebrate their deaths. They did this with Andrew, too. They were both outspoken conservatives, and their deaths were celebrated by people who never met them. But they were sure they knew everything they needed to know about them. And that process really opens your eyes. Boy, oh boy, is it clarifying. And it's happened to me twice now. I want to lay out exactly why things are different now with this Republican conservative movement in America, and how things will never be the same because of this, and how we are re-emboldened and re-energized and re-motivated. Boy, oh boy, are y'all in trouble at the ballot box. I think in Virginia, I think this turns the tide in Virginia. It had already started to turn. It may even move the needle in New Jersey. And don't even talk to me about the midterm elections next year. This is a game changer, as well it should be. You have awakened us. You have remotivated us. But I do hear a lot of hand-wringing. Oh, my goodness, how did this happen? How did so much hate and vitriol get to the point where someone would shoot this person down in the prime of life? How did we get here, right? You heard that a lot. You know what? Let me give you a little hint how we got here. Let's take a quick walk down memory lane. We don't have to go too far. It was only a handful of years ago, actually. About 4 years ago, in fact. Do you remember this?
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans quote a clear and present danger to our democracy. But while the threat to American democracy is real, I want to say as clearly as we can, we are not powerless in the face of these threats. MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger. They thrive on chaos. They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies. We've told ourselves that American democracy is guaranteed, but it's not. We have to defend it, protect it, stand up for it. Each and every one of us. We're all called by duty and conscience to confront extremists who put their own pursuit of power above all else. We must be stronger, more determined, and more committed to saving American democracy than MAGA Republicans are to destroying American democracy. MAGA Republicans look at America and see carnage and darkness and despair. They spread fear and lies. Lies told for profit and power. The MAGA Republicans believe that for them to succeed, everyone else has to fail.
That was the President of the United States. That was all one speech. None of that was taken out of context, by the way. I've afforded President Biden over 2 minutes of uninterrupted context in his remarks, something that they certainly don't afford Charlie Kirk posthumously right now as they try to lie about him and the hateful things, quote unquote, they claim he said. You'll remember the speech. He was standing in front of Independence Hall, bathed in blood-red light as he ranted and screamed about his fellow Americans, as he calls them, MAGA Republicans. What you heard there was the culmination of many years of a othering of Trump supporters, of Trump himself, and you. An othering effect, a dehumanizing effect, when you can label people the way he did, MAGA Republicans, and say things like, you are a extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic, that you don't respect the Constitution, that you don't believe in the rule of law, that you don't recognize the will of the people, that you embrace anger, that you thrive on chaos, that you live in the light of truth. Not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies. That's not language that you use when you have a political disagreement. That is language that you use when you're trying to raise the red warning lights of emergency about people, about your fellow citizens. There's a definite moral problem when you cast your political opponents as a national biohazard. You're degrading your fellow citizens who hold ideas that you differ with, but you're not engaging in the ideas. Did you hear any debate about ideas in that diatribe you just heard from that lamentable man we had to call president for 4 years? He communicated to our entire broad culture and society to treat millions of their neighbors as a threat to be contained, not fellow Americans to be persuaded and talked to. He was granting social permission, and the events that follow such social permissions are predictable. Whether you call us a basket of deplorables or all of the things that President Biden just called us, that ends up getting picked up in your classrooms, in your university campuses, on your late-night television shows, in your pop culture, in your music industry, in your films, and on your television shows, and yes, in the news media, the pages of the New York Times, and the Washington Post, and the Los Angeles Times, and on CBS, ABC, and NBC. If your fellow Americans live in the shadow of lies, then censoring them and deplatforming them and removing them from social media, well, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, you're doing a public service if you censor people like that. But there's a practical problem to this whole thing, isn't there? The people that Mr. Biden labeled there in that soundbite you just listened to as some kind of extremist fringe. Well, those people, of course, are not the fringe. In 2024, Donald Trump won the presidency by a decisive margin. Republicans won the Senate. Republicans won the House. Republicans hold a majority of the governorships and a majority of the state legislative chambers. Why are we being painted like the extremist fringe in this country? We keep winning. We are the dominant political voice in this country, and yet we're supposed to still apologize for it and keep our thoughts to ourselves, lest we be canceled for them. The coalition that Joe Biden's speech cast as some kind of civic emergency is the same coalition that won the White House and governs most of the country. When that coalition is described as a clear and present danger, you're not scolding a handful of extremists. You're condemning the voting majority in this nation. And yet for too long, we've sat back and allowed that to happen. Let me give you a concrete example. And you might think that this is, who cares? Who cares? No. Resist the instinct to say, who cares? It doesn't matter. Because I'm going to prove to you that it does matter. Was Charlie Kirk ever a guest on Meet the Press or This Week or Face the Nation? Was he ever invited? For his opinion, for his perspective, for his political analysis? Ever. Either as a guest or on the roundtables. They all conceded this weekend that he was one of the major political forces in this country. And yet those same shows that just conceded that after his death never had him on their shows when he was alive. Why? Why? These flagship shows that claim to host the most important voices in our politics never gave him a chair at the table. It's how they treat us as the outgroup. It has a dehumanizing effect. The message that's sent to millions of viewers, a number that is shrinking weekly, is that our views, our positions, our opinions are illegitimate and unworthy of having a seat at the table. When was the last time you watched those shows and someone sitting at the table said, oh, finally, yes, there's someone who speaks on my behalf? Never. The answer is never. Do you remember the first time you heard Rush Limbaugh on the radio or Mark Levin on the radio? Do you remember when you said, oh, finally, there's somebody on the radio or on television who speaks for me, who says the things I've only been thinking, right? You remember that feeling? You remember that moment? When was the last time that happened when you watched these television shows based in Washington, D.C. that are supposed to be the flagship crown jewel of our network news political coverage? The signal sent by these Sunday morning shows goes well beyond Sunday morning. It becomes a template of how schools and corporations and platforms and entertainment brands rationalize the exclusion of our voices. The message is simple. Those people don't count. Those ideas don't count. Those opinions don't count. They're not worthy to be included in our national conversation. And we are the majority in this nation. That's how permission structures form. The same voices that police every adjective for microaggression suddenly rediscover the joys of ridicule when the target wears a red hat. Jokes that would end careers if directed at any protected class become late-night fodder when they're directed at Republicans. Platforms that claim to fight disinformation quietly throttle one side's speech while excusing the others. A left-wing riot becomes mostly peaceful. A conservative parent at a school board meeting becomes a domestic extremist. This is how it happens. The same conduct is narrated in two moral languages. One side is excused and celebrated. The other side is pathologized. In other words, those people deserve what they get. There is a moral reality here in the daily political conversation we've been having in this country. A person's politics does not erase their personhood. The MAGA Republican is your kid's softball coach, your Uber driver, your church usher, your aunt who brings the pies at Thanksgiving. You can and should debate with each other on policy. That's the work of a free people. But the line that should never be crossed is the line that says that people you argue with are inherently lawless, anti-constitutional, or sub-citizen. And that's what we heard spewed from Biden, from Harris, from Democrats, elected officials, the media, pop culture, academia, even your favorite sports leagues. That's how dehumanization happens. And that's how last September 10th happened. It was easy to pick up that gun and fire a bullet at Charlie Kirk because he didn't deserve to live in this country saying the things that he said. Ask yourself why what Charlie Kirk said on college campuses was so extraordinary. Why was it so unique that those ideas were only said at a Charlie Kirk event and not in the classrooms of those same universities? And then you'll realize what has happened in this country. I've got more. I'm Larry O'Connor. It's the Mark Levin Show.
Mark Levin.
Decades of conflict in the Middle East made many despair of ever finding a lasting peace. But in 2020, Israel and 4 Arab nations, once estranged, joined together for peace by signing the Abraham Accords. Thanks to President Trump's leadership, these historic agreements opened up previously unimaginable channels for cooperation, new pathways for peace, trade, investment, and collaboration. After 5 years, the Abraham Accords still stand as a beacon of hope for a future of shared growth and interfaith tolerance. Why should Americans like you care? Peace in the Middle East is vital to America's national security, and that's why the Heritage Foundation dedicated its resources to supporting the implementation and expansion of the Abraham Accords and Peace Through Strength. And that's why the Heritage Foundation's experts released the Abraham Accords report, tracking the evolution and expansion of the Abraham Accords. This exclusive resource, only available from the Heritage Foundation, presents the latest news and statistics on how the Accords are boosting trade and innovation and advancing the U.S. critical interests in the Middle East. Get the latest updates today by going to heritage.org/LEVIN. That's heritage.org/Levin. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Larry O'Connor filling in for Mark Levin. Boy, that 1 hour flew by fast. I promise we're going to get to many more of your calls coming up in the next hour. You're all on hold. I want you to stay there. I want to hear from you. I want you to inspire others. I want you to recognize how you're different and how you're now going to approach the world differently after we see not just what they did to Charlie Kirk, but then the aftermath. The joy, the celebration, the rationalization, the denials, the lies, the both sidesism, the demand that we not take this personally. Hey, come on, we got this kind of violence on both sides. Why are you so upset? You hear stuff like that. Boggles the mind. But I think we're done. And a lot of people I know are done. Even I. A lot of people think, oh, you're an outspoken conservative talk show host and, you've been working with Breitbart and all these places for Town Hall for 15 years. You're right. On my Facebook page, up until last week, I haven't posted anything about politics. I have a whole group of people that I used to work with in a completely different industry. You may be surprised, but there are millions of people out there that have no idea anything about conservative talk radio, Fox News, Newsmax, any of the conservative media outlets. It's very easy to live in this country and never have any exposure to any conservative ideas, radio shows, media. You just get snippets that are fed to you. These people have no idea what my career is. They have no idea what I do, and I've protected them from it because I don't want to ruffle any feathers. I don't want to cause any ripples. Yeah, not anymore. Get ready.
This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Larry O'Connor sitting in for Mark Levin. Mark is in Israel on a pre-scheduled, pre-planned trip. He will be back. I am here, and we're having a conversation tonight about Charlie Kirk, about the pre-Charlie Kirk murder world that we lived in and the post-Charlie Kirk murder we're living in. If you like what you hear from me and you want to follow all the other projects that I work on a daily basis, there's a lot of material out there. Go to LarryVIP.com. That's sort of a clearinghouse for everything. LarryVIP.com. Haven't you ever wanted to be a Larry VIP? It's free, actually. Go ahead and join. 877-381-3811. Stay on the line there. I'm going to get to you, but I just want to set this up. That we're going to do mostly calls in the last half of the show, but I want to set it up with this very important, fantastic column today. I mentioned in the first hour that I worked with Andrew Breitbart. That's how I got into this world. I was the 7th person employed by Andrew Breitbart when he started his websites at the time called Big Hollywood, Big Government, Big Journalism, Big Peace. You now know them as one conglomerate website called Breitbart News. And one of the great things about working at Breitbart back in the early days when he was still in the basement of his home in Brentwood, California, is that I got to meet some amazing people. Alex Marlowe, who now runs the place, was the first person hired by Andrew Breitbart. The second person was John Nolte. John Nolte was the very first editor for Andrew's sites for Big Hollywood. He was a film writer, a movie critic, and his keen observations on our culture, on our media, and on politics has made him one of the clarion voices of the last decade and a half. Andrew knew how to pick them, I'll tell you that. And he wrote at Breitbart today, Charlie Kirk's assassination flipped a remarkable switch in the MAGA movement. This is John Nolte. What the left's public execution of Charlie Kirk has done to mobilize the MAGA movement is something I never expected to see. For more than 20 years, I've been a part of the conservative movement, never a mover or shaker, but a cog, happy to be overpaid to do my part, and an observer, always an observer. Last week, after the terrible news arrived that Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk had been assassinated, I observed something remarkable. It was so remarkable, it's difficult to find the words, but I'll try. It was as if some years ago someone downloaded a computer program directly into the fractured and fragile right-of-center movement, a movement that's always been balkanized and squabbling over territory. This computer program sat there for a long time waiting for a specific thing to happen, and when it did happen, a switch within each of us was flipped, and a miracle occurred. We didn't require a leader. There were no talking points issued. It just happened, all at once. Number one, we understood what had changed forever and why. Number two, we mobilized. Number three, we prepared for action. Number four, we instinctively knew what that action would be. Number five, we knew we had the power to take that action. Number six, we took that action and are doing so effectively. Number seven, we share an unprecedented resolve. Number eight, we're in it for the long term, forever, if needed. And here's the healthiest part of what's happening. No one is standing around helplessly complaining about how the regime media aren't fair. No one's crybabying about media bias. No one's wringing their hands that the media aren't doing to the left what they always do to us. Instead, based entirely on group instinct, we instantly understood that it was up to us to hold accountable those who celebrate Charlie Kirk's murder and those on the organized left, Democrats, media, academia, who put a fatwa on Charlie Kirk and the rest of us with their 24/7 Nazi and fascist and white supremacist talk. This has never happened on our side before. The corporate media have lived in our heads forever. But the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk finally evicted those demons. Today, we arrived at a place that seemed impossible 20 years ago. The media no longer hold power over us. The media no longer matter. At long last, and after decades of hard work, with the flip of that switch, we realize that we have the power now. And what a joy it is to watch us effectively use that power to hold evil accountable, welcome converts, and mobilize against the wicked forces that seem our spiritual and physical destruction. I want to pause to let anyone joining us know I'm reading a seminal column from John Nolte at Breitbart News that he posted today. Perfectly explains this pre-Charlie Kirk, post-Charlie Kirk world we're living in. CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, CBS, ABC, NBC, NPR, PBS are now white noise to us. No different from those lying about Israel murdering Charlie Kirk, whatever we say. We have work to do. Better still, instead of empowering the media with our complaints, instead of giving the media control of our emotions as we rage against their countless sins, we've transformed those sins into something useful. Fuel to make our arguments, bring in converts, and hold evil accountable. All at once, we've become impervious to the media's usual tricks with their dual revelation that, one, the media are irredeemable and not worth our time, and two, through alternative and social media, we hold the power in our country. Democrats and the media are calling for unity. In the past, we've fallen for that trap. But this time, the switch flipped. And our collective voice said, go away. You didn't ask for unity during the George Floyd riots. You never asked for unity when it's your side. You demand only fealty. Democrats and the media are calling for us to tone it down. Another trap we've fallen into. Not this time. This time, our collective voice said, go away. You never demand that your side tone down the rhetoric. It's only ever us. And when we do, when the best of us seeks to have a civil dialogue with you, you publicly execute him to terrorize the rest of us. Democrats and the media are desperate to emotionally blackmail us as we seek accountability for those who celebrate murder. Ah, yes, the old "my principles" trap. Collectively, we say go away. We saw what you did to a nobody rodeo clown who wore an Obama mask. You destroyed his career and made every Republican lawmaker answer for him. Today, there are literally thousands and thousands of credentialed Democrats, teachers, lawyers, academics, healthcare professionals inciting murder against us by celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder, and you've done nothing other than defend them. Our collective responses are glorious, and the most important part is the go away part. Yeah, we're done with the media. We don't need them. We know they want us dead. They call us Nazis. What do you think want to happen to us? Asks Kurt Schlichter. We're not them. And the terrible loss of a prince burned into us moral clarity. They loot and burn. We hold candlelight vigils. They cheer violence and murder. We do not. They champion and fund domestic terror groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter. We do not. They cancel and blacklist people over opinions. We seek long overdue accountability for celebrating violence. We hold power now. And we're wielding it peacefully, lawfully, relentlessly, and mercilessly. Everything's changed forever. Where this ultimately leads, or how successful it will be, I can't say, but at long last, we understand the mission, understand the enemy, have joined arms, and are on the march. That's John Nolte today at Breitbart, and I could not have said it better myself. That's why I decided to read it instead of attempting to say it myself. Let's turn to Allison now in Greensboro, North Carolina, listening on the Mark Levin app. Allison, thanks for calling in. I'm Larry O'Connor in for Mark Levin.
Thank you, sir, for your time. I have prayed about this, and I have decided that I am going to, on behalf of Charlie and his family, purchase an ultrasound machine for preborn. We're going to say Charlie Kirk is going to save unborn children.
Wow. That's phenomenal. Walk me through this. So you're going to get an ultrasound so that you can show expectant women preborns. You're going to try to do this where? In front of a pregnancy crisis center?
I just go through. So this will be the second time I've done it. My parents, God rest their souls, set me free such that I purchased a ultrasound machine on their behalf to save unborn children. And just thinking about what I can do as an old lady, I thought, well, unborn children. Charlie and his family are going to save unborn children.
That's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. Allison, thank you. Thank you for doing that. And that's exactly a beautiful way to honor him. And I bet you're going to inspire other people along those lines. Thank you. God bless you, Allison, in Greensboro, North Carolina. How about Sandra listening in Clifton, New Jersey on the great WABC there, deep in the heart of Manhattan? Hello, Sandra. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Larry O'Connor.
Hi, Larry. Yeah, hi, Larry. That was beautiful what you just said, because I was watching Charlie Kirk on one of his YouTubes talking passionately about the embryo and how it starts there. And I like what this lady said she's going to do.
Yeah,
but
that's wonderful.
I called tonight to say that the political scholars use the word watershed. It's a watershed moment, meaning it's the turning point that changes the course of history for us.
Yes.
It's a dark moment now. It's a sad moment. But this could be a catalyst for, one, people coming together on both sides saying enough is enough, or it can go further to deepen the polarization in this country. So on one hand, I see people getting fired now from their jobs because they say disgusting things that are so mean and cruel. And on the other hand, you see, and that's a good thing, and you see Pete Hegseth even telling people that are on his team they have to leave because he learned that they said things that weren't right.
Yeah, well, listen, if you're in the U.S. military and you celebrate the assassination of an American citizen, we got to call into question exactly whether you're fit to serve or not.
Exactly. So which way we will see which way this country is going, because there are a lot of evildoers out there, and I don't know what it's going to take to stop them. But Larry, thank you for.
You're right about it being a watershed moment, a galvanizing moment, and as you called it, a turning point. You know what the name of Charlie Kirk's organization was that he started back in 2012?
What? No, I did not.
Turning Point USA. Turning Point.
Ah, right. Right, turning point.
That's
right.
I think Charlie Kirk would appreciate this being a turning point, Sandra. God bless you, dear. That was lovely, beautiful, in fact. Where are we here? You know what? I want to have enough time to hit this next point I want to make, because you heard Sandra say that maybe we can, set aside some of our differences, figure out what we have in common, and then move forward in this country. And let the lunatic fringe on the left stay wallowed in their Zohran Mamdani fever dream, and the rest of us actually get back to being Americans together again. That would absolutely be in Charlie's spirit. And in a moment, I'm going to share a story with you, a perfect example, in fact, of how Charlie Kirk did, in fact, do. You hear this all the time for these sanctimonious types. Why can't we just figure out what we have in common and work together in this country and reach across party lines? And, of course, it always is reaching across to their side of the aisle to get done what they want done. But the fact of the matter is, Charlie Kirk actually did get that done, got two opposing political factions to come together and do something unheard of, incredible. He deserves credit for it, but he won't get it, of course. I'll tell you that story in a moment. It has to do with the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Stay here. You're going to like this. I'm Larry O'Connor, in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
When was the last time you bragged about your wireless company? Like, did you know my wireless company gave away 1,000 American flags to deserving vets and forgave $10 million in veteran debt? Did you know my wireless company raised almost $500,000 to help prevent veteran suicide? In other words, when your wireless company is Pure Talk, there's a whole lot to brag about. You can even brag about the coverage you get with Pure Talk, a 5G network that is insanely fast, dependable, and secure. And you can definitely brag about how much money you save with Pure Talk. Unlimited talk, text, plenty of data. Just $25 a month, saving the average family over $1,000 a year. It's time to switch to my favorite wireless company, Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin and save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, puretalk.com/LEVIN. Make the switch today. Pure Talk, wireless worth bragging about.
Last night was a prayer vigil in Washington, D.C. at the Kennedy Center for Charlie Kirk. Lined up around the building a couple of times. People were turned away. That's in D.C., where Republicans are a scarcity, I assure you. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was one of the people eulogizing Charlie Kirk.
And over the next couple of years, our friendship blossomed. He ended up being the primary architect of my unification with President Trump, which I did my endorsement at his rally, at the Turning Point rally in Scottsdale. And he was the one who put the sparklers on the stage when I shook it. He made a big show of it, but...
Yeah, he made a big show of it. It deserved a big show, and Charlie Kirk certainly knew how to put on a good show, made these political rallies cool, and something that young people wanted to be a part of with the sparklers. But think about what you just heard. Charlie Kirk was the architect of quite possibly the single greatest political merger of modern American history. Charlie Kirk. He was 30 years old at the time. Barely graduated high school by his own telling. Never went to college. The man had passion, the man had vision, the man inspired, and the man got a pro-choice, climate change activist Democrat named Kennedy. Like, you know, those Kennedys. Got him to set aside his deeply held political beliefs to join forces with a conservative Republican populist named Donald Trump. And Charlie Kirk got that man to also set aside some political differences that he had with Kennedy so that they could form a coalition and work together to win an election and then work on a unified government to get things done. You turn on cable news, broadcast news, you're going to see David Axelrod as a political genius, James Carville, Karl Rove. They're the geniuses, right? They won presidential elections for Obama and Clinton and Bush, and they know politics better than anyone. They couldn't have done that. They never dreamed of that. And like I said, you've got all these sanctimonious tut-tutters from the Washington Post and the New York Times editorial pages and on CNN and Chuck Todd and Kristen Welker. They're all sitting on their high perch looking down at the rest of us saying, why can't we just get along in politics? Why can't we set aside our differences, figure out what we have in common and work things out and get it done? That's what Charlie Kirk accomplished with the most genius political maneuver of our times to get Kennedy to join forces with Trump. That was the moment that the election was won. It was the game changer of 2024. And it was Charlie Kirk. You just heard Kennedy say he was the architect of that. And yet you never hear those people say, isn't it great that here a Democrat, a lifelong Democrat, joined forces with a Republican so they could get things done and accomplish great things? And no, because they don't want us to unify. They don't want us to get together. Not if it means we win.
When was the last time you bragged about your wireless company? Like, did you know my wireless company gave away 1,000 American flags to deserving vets and forgave $10 million in veteran debt? Did you know my wireless company raised almost $500,000 to help prevent veteran suicide? In other words, when your wireless company is Pure Talk, there's a whole lot to brag about. You can even brag about the coverage you get with Pure Talk, a 5G network that is insanely fast, dependable, and secure. And you can definitely brag about how much money you save with Pure Talk. Unlimited talk, text, plenty of data. Just $25 a month, saving the average family over $1,000 a year. It's time to switch to my favorite wireless company, Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin and save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, puretalk.com/LEVIN. Make the switch today. Pure Talk, wireless worth bragging about.
Mark Levin, the voice of America. Dial in now at 877-381-3811.
877-381-3811 is indeed the phone number. I'm Larry O'Connor in for Mark Levin. Mark and I both work with and are affiliated with the same media company, Cumulus Media, that owns Westwood One, which is the network that syndicates the Mark Levin Show. But the radio station you're listening to right now might not necessarily be a Cumulus Media radio station. That's how syndication works. But my radio station in Washington, D.C. is, in fact, a Cumulus Media station. And so Mark and I have that in common. We both have the same corporate ownership, I suppose, although Mark's relationship with the corporation is way different than mine. And there have been times over the years where I have disagreements with the company that I work for. I think everybody has the same situation. We have different disagreements with the companies we work for. But the funny thing about that, it's their network, it's their radio station, it's their sandbox. They pay me well to play in it, and I'm fine with that. But I want to say something about Charlie Kirk and about the company that we work for, if I could. Charlie Kirk is also a radio talk show host. He works for a different company, the Salem Radio Network. He syndicated his show on their network and his podcast on their network. By the way, I have a podcast too. It's confusing, but I actually do a podcast with Salem as well. So I have a corporate relationship with Salem. But my radio home is with Cumulus. And the fact that Charlie Kirk is one of us, a colleague of ours, a radio host, and that he was murdered the way that he was, while he was in the process of a public appearance doing what we do every day, it resonates with those of us who do this, with those of us who engage in the arena. It's funny. I've said this before to the people that employ me. They don't really fully understand what it is they ask us to do. They ask us to have a daily conversation for many hours a day and to talk about all of the things that none of us are supposed to talk about in polite company. You go to a dinner party and you start raising the issues that we raise on the Mark Levin Show or on O'Connor and Company in the mornings on WMAL, or you pick it, any talk show, any radio show. And you won't be invited back to most of those dinner parties unless you raise these issues in an entertaining, engaging, stimulating, and provocative way. And not everybody is stimulated by the same kind of approach necessarily. Those things that aren't necessarily polite conversation at a cocktail party makes for great talk radio. We are asked to put ourselves out there and to extend ourselves and to stimulate conversation, provoke ideas, and provoke an emotional response. That's the job. And we're asked to do that, and those of us who do it well have nice, long, lucrative careers. But there's another side to that career. You end up being polarizing. You end up, well, just look at the greatest one to do what we do, to have ever lived and broadcast, Rush Limbaugh. This medium, this radio station that you're listening to right now, were it not for Rush Limbaugh carving a brand new path for talk radio, spoken word radio content 30 years ago, the radio station you're listening to right now probably wouldn't even exist. And yet, the greatest one to ever do what we've done is still maligned and lied about and disparaged by a whole swath of the media elite and the cultural elite in this country. And yet our employers do ask us every day to come out and do this. And those of us who do it successfully and have been able to make careers out of it, we do it because we love it. And we recognize the risks involved. We recognize that there are dangers out there, and we recognize that for many people in our lives and in polite society, we will no longer be welcome. But we passionately love this country. We passionately love the First Amendment and our freedoms, and we passionately love you, the people who tune in every day to be a part of what we do here. And so I was hoping that my company, our company, would put out some kind of statement about Charlie Kirk. I even sent an email earlier to our CEO and to many of our executives asking them to do that because it would mean something to us. It would mean something to those of us who are asked to extend ourselves and put ourselves out there every single day, to know that we had corporate support, that they recognized the gravity of this situation. There have been other crimes and murders over the past several years that have shook our nation and created a national conversation in a very similar way that the Charlie Kirk incident has. And frankly, my company did in fact put out many statements about those crimes that involved police officers, crimes that were caught on video that created riots and arsons. You know what I'm talking about. And every corporate entity on the planet decided they had to put out statements about that, including mine, including the company I work for. But the murder of Charlie Kirk, they didn't say anything about. And that's fine. Like I said, it's their sandbox. They can choose to do with it what they want. But here's the thing. I found out today that they wouldn't be putting out a statement as I suggested and recommended they do, because I think it would be a good thing for our company. It would be a good thing for morale and for the employees of this company, the hosts that extend ourselves every day. I was trying to help my company by suggesting they do that, and they told me they weren't going to do it. But here's the thing. I'm hosting the Mark Levin show tonight, so I can put out a statement. So that's what I'm going to do. The statement is titled, "We Will Not Be Silenced." The news of Charlie Kirk's brutal murder has shaken us to our core. For those of us behind a microphone each day, it was not just an attack on a friend or a colleague or a leader. It was an attack on our entire industry, our movement, and the very principle of free speech. Charlie was more than a conservative activist. He was a broadcaster, a communicator, a man who understood the power of radio and its unmatched ability to reach Americans where they live, work, and drive. He embraced our medium because he knew it could bypass the gatekeepers and speak truth directly to millions. And for that reason, because he was effective, fearless, and unrelenting, he was targeted. This was not random violence. This was political violence. It was meant to silence a voice. And in silencing that voice, it was meant to intimidate the rest of us, to scare us into pulling our punches, to warn us that telling the truth has consequences. Well, here's the truth. We will not be intimidated, and we will not be silenced. Conservative talk radio is the last truly free public square in America. We don't answer to corporate boardrooms in New York or Silicon Valley. We answer to our listeners, the American people. Every morning, every afternoon, millions tune in because they know they'll hear what the mainstream media refuses to cover. They come to us because they trust us to tell it straight. And if anyone thinks the murder of Charlie Kirk is going to drive us off the airwaves, they don't understand who we are. The history of talk radio is the history of resilience. From Rush to Charlie, our voices have endured smear campaigns, advertiser boycotts, government threats, and now, tragically, deadly violence. Yet every time they try to shut us down, we come back stronger. Every time they think they've broken us, our audience grows. Charlie's death is a wound, but it's also a call to arms. Not with weapons, of course, but with words. Words of truth, words of conviction, words that cannot be canceled, cannot be censored, and cannot be silenced by fear. As an industry, we stand together today. Whether you broadcast from a major market station or a small-town affiliate, whether your show runs nationally or locally, we are united. Charlie's microphone may have been forced into silence, but ours will burn brighter because of it. We will carry his message. We will carry his courage and his relentless pursuit of truth forward. To Charlie's family, we grieve with you. To our listeners, we stand with you. And to those who think violence can silence ideas, you're wrong. The ideas of liberty, faith, and American exceptionalism will ring louder than ever. Charlie Kirk is gone. But the cause he championed lives on. His voice echoes in every one of ours. And we will keep talking. We will keep broadcasting. We will keep fighting together. Because in the end, freedom always wins. Now, that is my statement. On behalf, I humbly suggest, of my fellow talk radio hosts and radio broadcasters who have been shaken to the core by the events of last week. That is my statement on behalf of the radio station you are hearing me on right now. And I'll be so bold as to say that's my statement on behalf of the company that employs me. I wish they had made the statement, but I'll tell you what. You can take it, it's on your airwaves now, transcribe it, print it out, and put it out as a statement. And you can go ahead and take it. Because I know in my heart you agree with me. And it needed to be said. It needed to be said for Charlie. It needed to be said for everybody doing what we do on a daily basis in talk radio. Because the bullet was meant for Charlie. But we all felt it. Because we know that that was an intimidation move. To try to put the thought in the back of all of our minds when we do a public appearance, when we are out in public, that there is a target on us as well, and it's not going to work. And that's why our industry needs to stand strong, and why the corporations who present our programs need to lead the way and stand strong with us and for us. And I'm glad that my company allowed me the opportunity to deliver that. All right, we've got more of your reaction and your calls. I want to hear from you. How are you different today? How will you pledge to carry Charlie's torch? Starting today, how are things different in your world? 877-381-3811. I'm Larry O'Connor. It's the Mark Levin Show.
Mark Levin.
When was the last time you bragged about your wireless company? Like, did you know my wireless company gave away 1,000 American flags to deserving vets and forgave $10 million in veteran debt? Did you know my wireless company raised almost $500,000 to help prevent veteran suicide? In other words, when your wireless company is Pure Talk, there's a whole lot to brag about. You can even brag about the coverage you get with Pure Talk, a 5G network that is insanely fast, dependable, and secure. And you can definitely brag about how much money you save with Pure Talk. Unlimited talk, text, plenty of data. Just $25 a month, saving the average family over $1,000 a year. It's time to switch to my favorite wireless company, Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin and save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, puretalk.com/LEVIN. Make the switch today. Pure Talk, wireless worth bragging about.
Larry O'Connor filling in for the great one, Mark Levin. All right, I've been promising I want to hear from you, and I've had so much to say, and it's selfish of me. I want to hear it. It's time. Let's turn to your phone calls here at 877-381-381. Take the platform, take the stage, and I want to hear how you're different now. Let's start with Patrick in Kansas City on KCMO, where your Chiefs lost to the Eagles again, Patrick. I don't know what to tell you. It
it happens, but, it is what it is. Like any loss, you have to move on.
That's right.
I think what you've seen with the, whole Charlie Kirk thing, is a sort of a rise, sort of a trend of political violence in America. You look at the assassination attempt at Trump, you look at January 6th, and, you look at all these things kind of culminating over time. And, I will say, I think that, in order to be concurrent and objective and truthful with our values, I think, we have to condemn not only political violence on the left, but I'd argue also political violence on the right. I think you have to be sort of universal in your values, I'd argue.
Well, yeah, I would agree. I don't think I'm not aware of anyone who has not condemned political violence on the right. The problem is that when the statement is made saying, well, if you're going to condemn political violence on the left, you have to condemn political on the right, it makes it sound as though it's symmetrical and that we have an equal amount of political violence on the left and the right. And I'm sorry, last I checked, we're the ones who have a president with a hole in the side of his ear because a bullet came millimeters away from his skull. And we're the ones who has the corpse of a 31-year-old father of 2 toddlers who was killed because he dared to have conservative political views.
We can count scores as though this is like some type of game, or we can actually come together as Americans and, be truthful, as Christ told us, and just condemn violence altogether. I mean, we can count numbers, or we can count objective facts. I mean, for example, you had Melissa Hortman, a Minnesota Democratic lawmaker. She was shot dead along with her husband.
Yeah, why was she shot dead?
You also had January 6th, where 100.
No, whoa! Don't go so fast. Let's go back to Ms. Hortman, Democrat lawmaker in Minnesota. Why was she killed?
On January 6th. So again, it's universal.
Wait, do you want to listen to me and have a conversation, Patrick? Why was Ms. Hortman killed in Minnesota?
Because she had political disagreements, which is the same reason why Charlie Kirk was killed.
No, that's not true.
I mean,
not for the same reasons. She was. Do you think that she was killed by a conservative Republican who didn't like that she was a Democrat?
Well, and that's how she died. I mean,
no, that's not how she died. That's not who murdered her. She was murdered by a crazy man who claimed that Tim Walz, the Democrat governor, had ordered him to do that. And that's all we know about this so far, as that witness is the suspect is still being tried for the murder. But there's some evidence to suggest that he was angry that she had crossed the aisle and voted for Republicans. Okay? Now you want to mention January 6th? Okay, go ahead. What happened on January 6th that is in any way equal to what happened to Charlie Kirk last week?
Well, one person died, as a result
of
January 6th.
Who died?
Died. Well, I can pull his name up here, but,
No. Ashley Babbitt. It's not a him, it's a her. Ashley Babbitt died. She was killed by a reckless police officer who was never arrested or had to see any sort of trial for murdering Ashley Babbitt because Nancy Pelosi protected him and swept it under the rug. She was unarmed.
Okay, yeah. If I enter...
And 1,000 people were arrested by the United States Justice Department. Many of them, their lives were turned upside down because of January 6th, because they walked through a door that a police officer held open. I'm not saying that everything that happened on January 6th was innocuous. What I'm saying was they're not the same as Charlie Kirk being murdered in cold blood for having a conversation on a college campus. And Patrick, if you don't have the moral clarity to understand the difference, when all you do is say violence is bad, well, I'm sorry, but that's actually kind of a meaningless bromide. Violence in and of itself actually isn't bad. I mean, think about it for a second here, Patrick. If you had a chance to murder Hitler before he killed 6 million Jews, would that violence have been bad?
January 6th. Don't you agree? 140 police officers, and this is according to the police department, 140 men and women who served with a badge, them getting injured. Don't you think that's terrible?
Yes, those police officers were absolutely betrayed and let down by Nancy Pelosi not calling in the National Guard, as Stephen Sund, the chief of police of Capitol Police, begged her to do for days before the event and all morning long. Now, get back to my question again. You said all violence is bad. If you had the chance to kill Hitler before the Holocaust, would that violence have been bad?
It depends. I mean, I wouldn't kill him.
No, it doesn't depend, Patrick. I'm sorry. Forgive me. With all due respect, you're a moral ignoramus. We live in a moral society, sir. Violence is not bad in and of itself.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Larry O'Connor sitting in for the great one, Mark Levin, and having a cathartic time, actually. Really honored to be sitting in for Mark at a time like this. Mark is in Israel, planned trip. We knew a couple weeks ago that I'd be here tonight. It just so happens that it coincides with this, well, honestly, society-altering event that happened to all of us over the course of the last week. And I want to hear from you at 877-381-3811 how you have been changed by this, not just the assassination of Charlie Kirk, as if that's not enough, but then the events afterwards, the lying, the gaslighting, the finger-wagging in your face that you're not allowed to grieve the way you want to grieve, the celebration of his murder, the elevation of the political ideology that led to this violence. That's all happening right now before our very eyes. You know, there are people on my Facebook page, probably on yours as well, who are determined that the suspect that is in custody now was motivated by right-wing hate. That this is just another example of a right-wing, white, conservative man who loves his guns and decided to take it out on Charlie Kirk with gun violence. I do love that. Oh, if only we had some common sense gun laws in America, this wouldn't have happened. Let me tell you something. Bolt action hunting rifle, the most radical of anti-Second Amendment zealots out there that lie to you and say that they just want common sense gun safety measures because they know that their old phrase, gun control, doesn't play well with American voters. So, of course, they always have to come up with new euphemisms and twist the language around. You know, we're not pro-abortion. No, we're just pro-choice. Oh, no, we're not pro-choice anymore because people don't like that. No, we're just for women's health alternatives. Reproductive health. Yeah, that's it. Reproductive health. Let me tell you something. If you're looking to have an abortion, the Reproductive Act has already occurred. Your hope is to stop it dead in its tracks. But that's what they do. They always come out with a brand new description for their political agenda because it's been market tested now, and you'll buy this one. We'll fool you with this one. So, of course, now it's common sense gun safety measures. It's not even laws. No, we don't want laws. We don't want gun control laws. We want common sense gun safety measures, you see. And, of course, the media always adopts their language when reporting the news. They're more than happy to make that their style book. Oh, yeah, we don't call them gun control laws anymore, and we certainly won't call them laws that would undermine your Second Amendment rights to bear arms, which is how I would describe them. You know, you'll never hear the AP or the New York Times describe these things as laws that will undermine your Second Amendment right to bear arms. No, so instead they immediately adopt their language. But let's just be clear here. Every common sense gun safety measure that has ever been proposed in my entire lifetime would not have taken a bolt action hunting rifle out of anybody's hands in this country. Remember how every Democrat goes out and dresses up like Elmer Fudd? You remember Tim Walz just did it in the last election cycle. Look at me, I'm hunting wabbits. And they dress up like Elmer Fudd, and they go out for a photo op in September. It's always in, the fall because it's right before the election. And they're out there. Remember, he could barely load his shotgun or a bolt-action hunting rifle like this weapon in this murder. And they always have the cameras out there showing, see, he likes guns. He's fine with hunting. Hunting is fine. They all think the Second Amendment is about getting rabbits and ducks and deer. That's what I assure you, I've read the Second Amendment many times. There's nothing in there about hunting. Nothing. But that's the photo op that they always get. Well, let me tell you, that's what this gun is, okay? So anybody who said anything about gun laws and gun control and common sense gun safety measures as some sort of gotcha moment about the murder of Charlie Kirk, they're just lying to your face. The only common sense gun safety measure that would have prohibited this guy from having this gun that he used to murder Charlie Kirk is if they confiscated every gun in our country, which, by the way, when they're finally honest with you, is exactly what they want to do. But they know that you would never vote for them if they told you exactly what they want to do, and that's why they're not honest with you. But I do want to hear from you about how things are different now. And what is it exactly that you're going to do now to make a difference? And by the way, if that means taking your family to church or to temple on a weekly basis now, because you are inspired by and admire the fact that Charlie was so devoted and such a man of faith, that would be a beautiful answer. In fact, if everybody did that, I dare say the politics would certainly follow in short order. But you do need to get involved if you really do care about what happened to Charlie, and if you really do care about the atrocities that we've seen play out in our public square and in the media, and the lies that have been told, then you need to get involved and you need to do something. And it does not take long to make a difference. I will give for you an example that it comes to mind immediately about how quickly you can make a difference. There's an organization called Turning Point USA. You may have heard of it. It was started by a young man named Charlie Kirk when he was 18 years old. And he had a simple notion that he would go out to college campuses and organize and get young conservatives for two reasons on college campuses. He would get young conservatives involved in politics. He did this for two reasons. Number one, because he wanted to introduce ideas about freedom and liberty and limited government and Ronald Reagan and our American founding fathers and our basic American principles and the free market economic theories that have always succeeded worldwide, and certainly here in America, when coupled with a free republic and a constitutional republic. He wanted to deliver those ideas to college campuses because they sure aren't showing up in the classrooms. He wanted to be one voice amongst thousands on a college campus that said, no, actually, there is an alternate way of looking at the economy and at freedom and at America and our greatness. And suddenly that message started to take off, and he attracted a whole lot of people who had never heard these ideas before. And they started to get converted. That was the first reason why he wanted to go to college campus. You know what the second reason was? To let all of those conservative young men and women who were raised right by their parents, who loved their Lord, and who held on to traditional principles and values. He wanted to let them know that they were not alone at that college, that they no longer had to hide in the shadows. They no longer had to apologize or be embarrassed for being conservative and being raised conservative and not wanting to be a part of the hedonistic, left-wing, America-hating Marxism that was the dominant culture on that campus. He wanted to give them a place to be. And boy, did they come out of the woodwork. And how effective was it? Well, let me tell you. The major story out of the 2024 presidential election was the young male vote. You heard it all the time. The bros, the podcast listeners, the online young men who suddenly made a lurch to the right. But people don't know how significant this lurch was. There are polls that ask people of all demographics, sexes, and age groups what their party affiliation is. They do these polls all the time. Republicans are surging right now almost across the board, especially male Republicans. Our numbers are growing. Women are lagging behind, certainly single women, young single women. We need to focus on them. I'm hoping that they'll come along. If you're a married woman, you're more likely to be conservative, especially if you're a mother. But the one group that changed everything in 2024 was young men between the age of 18 and 29. That would be the Charlie Kirk age group. That would be the Charlie Kirk target group, the demographic that Charlie Kirk aimed at. From 2023, where the majority of men 18 to 29 identified as Democrat, to where we are right now in 2025, where the majority of men 18 to 29 identify as Republican. Over the course of those 2 years, from 23 to 25, not only did that demographic, men 18 to 29, switch from Democrat identification to majority Republican Party identification, but they switched to the factor of 44 points. Did you hear me? Young men aged 18 to 29 2 years ago identified as Democrat, and now to the tune of a 44-point swing, they now identify as Republican. That's Charlie Kirk. That's what he was able to accomplish when he had a goal, and he was focused on it, and he worked every day to get it done. Do you love this country? Do you want to leave this country in better hands than you got it? Do you want to reach down and get that generation of young Americans just now entering the workforce or just getting into adulthood? Do you want to encourage them to love this country instead of hate it? Then what are you doing starting today? What are you going to do to help fulfill Charlie Kirk's mission? I would like to hear your ideas at 877-381-3811. Your call's next. It's Larry O'Connor in for the great one, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin.
Larry O'Connor sitting in for the great one, Mark Levin. My marketing director and my business partner both reached out to me during the break there and said, hey, you forgot to tell people how they can find you and see all the other stuff that you do. And, of course, when I say my marketing director and my business partner, I mean my wife. Yes, I forgot to mention that I'm filling in for Mark Levin. I'm the radio host on WMAL in Washington, D.C. every morning. And I also do a streaming video show every day at Town Hall, and I write columns, and I'm all over the place. The best way to find me and my books and all the stuff I do, go to LarryVIP.com. LarryVIP.com. It's a clearinghouse for the podcast, for radio, for columns, for newsletters, everything. It's free. LarryVIP.com. Thank you for that. You know, it's not a name that you associate with VIP. I'm not going to lie. I've been plagued with the name Larry my whole life. And Larry, you know, listen, we're the unfunniest of the Three Stooges, right? But the most handsome, I would say. Very rarely does the name Larry get that kind of respect, and that's why it's kind of tongue in cheek. Actually, I'm not just a VIP. I'm a Larry VIP. That's right. LarryVIP.com. 877-381-3811. I am dying to talk to Mike in Walled Lake, Michigan, because, Mike, I grew up right near Walled Lake, Michigan. My father, for a while, lived in Walled Lake, Michigan. So I love Walled Lake, Michigan. Thanks for calling.
I love you, buddy. Hey, bless you for what you do, and I'll call you Mr. O'Connor with your cabinet of spectacular women on the WMAL starting at 5 to 9. I listen to you guys
we have a
every
great team.
morning.
Julie Gunlock and Patrice Onwuka and a whole cast of characters, and our great producer, Heather Hunt. I'm surrounded by amazing conservative women every day.
But they're marvelous. I mean, absolutely marvelous, Mr. O'Connor. And,
Larry, call me Larry.
I like Mr. O'Connor. I grew up respecting those that we admire the most.
Thank you.
And I tell you what, listening to the tributes from so many since the 10th, and all the young people coming out saying how much they admire Mr. Charlie Kirk, and here in Detroit, the young black people coming out, the young people, high school people, the young children, paying tribute, lining up in parade-type form, paying tribute to Mr. Charlie Kirk and his family, and how much they admire him and how they admire him for what he's doing for the young children, not only here in Detroit and in Michigan, but across the country and
around the world, Mike.
Around the world. I mean, countries that one wouldn't expect. But it was just the tributes, Mr. O'Connor, are continuing day after day after day. They were just magnificent. And it was just listening to the Saturday program from Mr. Levin and hearing Charlie Kirk's. He spent the whole Saturday evening presentation with Charlie Kirk.
Yeah. When
he was 26, it was magnificent. Yeah. And but the tributes, Larry, were just the young people. But when you hear some of these young people talk, some of the ones saying he spoke evil, I don't know. I've listened to numerous podcasts. My wife listens to him every day.
Yeah.
But where they come up with that he spoke evil, I don't know.
Mike, they just lie. It's the way they lied about Rush Limbaugh. It's the way they lie about Mark Levin. It's the way they lie about all of us. Charlie put out, I think, 2 to 3 hours of live content every single day on radio and on podcast. And he gave college speeches. He gave television appearances. He had streaming shows. He was every single day. And these lying, deceptive, evil people will pull a half of a sentence out of a 10-minute monologue and say, he said this. The New York, Mike, thank you for the call. And tell Wald Lake I said hi. I love Wald Lake. It's beautiful. The New York Times had a great credit in their obituary. And it had a byline of like 3 or 4 different reporters. They had to put a correction out because they said, Charlie Kirk said an anti-Semitic thing. Turned out, he was reading someone else's anti-Semitic line, and then he spent half an hour lambasting the guy.
Mark Levin, radio's principled patriot. Call in now at 877-381-3811.
Larry O'Connor sitting in for the great one, Mark Levin. I got sidetracked there. I was saying there are people out there who still believe that this suspect was inspired by conservative, right-wing, white supremacist, far-right ideas. They were killing Charlie Kirk, but he wasn't conservative enough, they said. Yeah. And they say that because they actually saw it repeated in mainstream media. They saw it repeated by, on the left-wing, blue sky, Instagram, TikTok, wherever the hell they get their information. They had so convinced themselves that this had to be right-wing violence. It had to be conservative violence. And, of course, it was nothing of the sort. Nothing of the sort. And we learned that today. Kash Patel on Fox News confirmed it. It was confirmed in a Washington Post article today through leaks from people close to the investigation. It's and we all knew it. They had built up this narrative that they were so sure that they could fool you with, or at least fool your friends with. And I have no doubt that you have friends right now on your social media pages, on your Facebook page. I have no doubt that some of your friends right now still believe that this was a right-wing, white Republican, gun-loving assassin who killed Charlie Kirk because he didn't like Charlie Kirk not being conservative enough. Charlie Kirk was too nice to Israel. Charlie Kirk was too nice to the gays. That's what they'll say. And they will believe it because they cannot face the reality that their political movement is the one that glorifies violence, that their political movement right now is more likely to rationalize violence against their political opponents. A recent poll. Do you ever think it is justified for citizens to resort to violence in order to achieve political goals? Very liberal, 25% say yes. Liberal, 17% say yes. That's 42% of people who identify themselves as either liberal or very liberal in this country say that it is justified for citizens to use violence to achieve a political goal. Conservatives, 6%. Very conservative doesn't even register, 2%, which is statistically meaningless in a poll. That is who they are. But they can't face the reality. They cannot face that reality, and so they would rather lie. They would rather lie and say that this was not a radicalized left-wing lunatic in a relationship with a transgender activist, a dude who was going through chemical, pharmaceutical, and potentially surgical procedures so that they could look more like a woman. I refuse to use the term transitioning, because transitioning implies that there is, in fact, a legitimate reality to the idea that someone born a man can then transition and become a woman. You cannot. You can chop things off. You can take drugs to make yourself look extraordinarily realistic. I've seen pictures. You can have plastic surgery. You can wear makeup. You can do plenty of things to make yourself look like a woman. But guess what? You're not. You have not transitioned into anything. You have merely put on a really effective disguise. Good for you. Congratulations. The fact that we have been programmed and trained to use the term transition to describe that self-mutilation to accommodate what I believe to be a mental disorder. The fact that in polite society you must use the term transition. In fact, if you do not use the words transition and you describe this relatively new cultural phenomenon of self-harm in the way that I have just described it, well, then you will be called a bigot, you see. Even better, a bigot that 42% of American liberals believe potentially should be violently attacked to achieve a political goal. That's how we get here, you see. That's how we get here. We have a humble request, those of us on the reasonable right, you know, the majority of your fellow Americans. It's a very reasonable request. As you wring your hands and wonder, oh gosh, this is really a problem on both sides. What can we do to stop the violence, the political violence? It's wrong. I have a humble request. My fellow conservatives have that request. If you're genuinely feeling that, if you genuinely feel like that you would like to do something to stop the violence, here's our humble request. Stop calling people you disagree with fascists. Stop calling people you disagree with Nazis. Stop saying of those that you oppose in an election that if they win, we will not have another free election in our country ever again. Stop saying that your candidate and your party are trying to protect democracy. Stop saying that your political opponent offers an existential threat to our nation. Stop saying that if we still hold on to the quaint notion that there are only two sexes, male and female, and we haven't bought on to this idea that has only been around for about a minute and a half in the grand scheme of humanity and humans' existence on this planet. If we don't buy into this relatively new idea that there are, what is it up to now, 58 different genders? That we are in fact bigoted and we're trying to erase you from existence if you identify with one of the other 55 genders that are pretend and don't exist. You won't buy into my altered reality about gender? You're trying to erase me from the planet. Stop using that language. Stop saying those things. Stop saying that if we don't want men dressed as girls to go into our daughter's locker room, and expose male genitalia to our underage daughters against their will. Stop saying that we are contributing to teen suicides because that's our position in protecting our daughters from such a vile thing. Again, these are all humble suggestions, but they'll go a long way to stopping the political violence. Stop saying that people who believe these things and stand for these things don't deserve to be platformed, don't deserve to express themselves publicly. Stop saying that the man who won the presidential election last fall by a majority vote in this country and overwhelmingly by the Electoral College vote, stop saying that he should not be normalized. You are not deciding who is normalized or not in a constitutional republic. We, the voters, do that. Stop saying that if we believe there should be accountability for those who made destructive decisions during the pandemic resulting in great harm to our children, that we are science deniers. Stop saying that if we refuse to allow you to force us to inject a serum into our child's body that has not been fully tested, or for that matter, a serum into our newborn baby that is protecting them from a sexually transmitted diseases, which is mostly spread amongst intravenous drug users and people with multiple sexual partners. Stop saying that if we refuse that for our newborn baby, that we are science deniers who will allow measles to run rampant and polio to cripple children again. Stop saying that about us. Stop othering us. Stop dehumanizing us. Stop categorizing us as the untouchables of American society. Stop celebrating comedians who have multi-million-dollar platforms on network television in late night to never once invite us to the table, to never once let our ideas be heard, who use us as a punching bag and a punchline and fodder for their echo chamber of jokes and laughter and clapter, rather than actually trying to entertain people. Stop celebrating that and giving those people awards. That would go a long way. That would be a great first start. That would be terrific. You see, all of those things undermine a society. They undermine a culture. It works contrary to the quaint notion that we're to debate our differences respectfully in public with each other, rather than creating an atmosphere where people who hold certain political views don't deserve to live. If you'd like to fix the problem, you might want to address the 42% of your cohort who believe that it is justified to use violence for a political end in our society. Start there. And then maybe we'll actually get something done around here. That would be a great start. We'll finish up with your calls in a moment. My name's Larry O'Connor. It's the Mark Levin Show.
Mark Levin.
Larry O'Connor in for Mark Levin tonight. Thanks for hearing me out and being here with me. It's been cathartic and therapeutic, if I may say, as we need this. We need to be together. We're in this together, as I said earlier, about the dynamic relationship we create here in talk radio in a very intimate way. And Charlie was part of that. Charlie Kirk was part of talk radio. He was a colleague on this platform, on these platforms. And that resonates even more with us. So thank you for letting me into your life today, as Mark is in Israel on a planned trip. He'll be back, though. Of course, we can't do without him. And again, I want to remind you, LarryVIP.com. You can get my my columns, my newsletter, my podcast, my radio show that I do 4 hours a day every morning in D.C., my streaming show, my books, all that jazz. All right, let's get to you now. How about Robert in Columbus, Ohio, listening on XM? Hey, Robert, thanks for calling in. Buckeye.
Hey,
good
Larry.
to talk with you.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. Well, we've talked before because I'm the guy who runs the Conservative Theater Company in Ohio, the only one in the country. Oh, my gosh,
we sure did, Robert. Yeah. You're Andrew Klavan's buddy.
I'm Andrew Klavan's buddy. That's right.
There you go.
Well, I want to answer
great to
your
hear your
question.
voice, Robert.
Thank you. Well, I want to answer your question in how did Charlie Kirk's murder change what I'm doing? And I realized that after 10 years of doing my company and 10 years of making sure that I said things that didn't offend this person and didn't offend that person, and 10 years of trying to get grants from organizations who didn't like what I stand for and ignored me no matter how I tempered my message, I have decided that I am going to continue and be louder and stronger with my voice in theater. And quite honestly, when Kirk was killed, I said to myself, what have I been doing? Yeah. And so there's a new attitude. As I
love it. Listen, I come from the arts, as you know, Robert, and it's true. We conservatives, we apologize for who we are and what we believe in an artistic field, which makes no sense at all. Did Oscar Wilde apologize for his beliefs? Did Moliere apologize for his beliefs? Did Tennessee Williams apologize for his beliefs? No. They were who they were. They let their art speak for themselves. In a society pushed back, screw society.
Right. And I'm going to be as respectful as Charlie Kirk is with those who push against me and those who won't audition for me and those who won't pay me any attention. I'll be as respectful, but by gosh, I'm going to say what I believe in a more strong way now that Kirk is gone.
I love it, Robert. Maybe I can connect you with some people at the Kennedy Center, and we can see if we can maybe do something there. Great to hear from you again, Robert. And please, you still have my email. Please reach out. Let's go to, how about Beth in Appalachia, Kentucky? Appalachia, not Appalachia. Appalachia. Yes. Thanks, Beth.
I'm sorry, it's Appalachia here where we live.
That's right. That's what someone told me. It's if you say it wrong, I'll throw an apple at you, and I've always remembered that now.
Well, here we are today. I love that last fella. I need to know where he's at. I'm not 3-4 hours away from where he lives, but I could take a show and an excuse to stay overnight.
Yeah.
But Charlie Kirk, what has he done for me? He opened my eyes after I quit mourning, and I looked at myself and I realized, okay, Beth, you've already been hypocrite for your religion. I left the Methodist Church because of all their yakking about homosexuality. So half my neighborhood is against me. That's okay. I walk to church every Sunday somewhere. But what this has happened has made me dive deeper into the Constitution. To be able to pull it out of me. Wrong grammar here. More brave.
Yeah.
I'm in a lot of genealogical societies, and I can rack off, I believe in all of this and Bill of Rights, but to get it in me, I need to do that now.
That sounds beautiful, Beth. I love it. And that little bit will make a difference if everyone does their little bit. Thank you for calling, and I'm glad you shared your story. I want to get as many as I can here. How about Sarai, is it, in Culpeper, Virginia? Beautiful Culpeper, listening on the mighty WMAL, my home station. Hey, Sarai.
Hey, can you hear me all right?
I sure can. You sound great.
Oh, thank you. Well, I love your show, Larry, and I listen to your morning show, and I'm just trying to get all of it. before I say, but basically, Charlie helped me define my political opinions in my teen years, and I'm very heartbroken. But in Charlie's honor, I'm going to go get involved in my local Republican committee.
Let's go. I love it. Get involved, organize, vote. Just do it for Charlie. Thanks for listening. I'll be back again. Larry O'Connor.